Caleb's story is important. It's important for everyone. It's a story of horrible stuff. An English teacher should have better words than stuff, but horrible things happening not based on Caleb, not based on any actions Caleb did except to be Caleb. And that is the world that we live in. And Caleb's poetry is about surviving that world, going through the pits of that survival and coming out happily on the other side. And that's the most important thing here. And there are so many people who need to hear Caleb's story because they are experiencing the same things that Caleb has. And so we're happy to have him here tonight, back home at UNA. Yay, Roar Lions or something. So I'm going to turn it over to Caleb, and thank you all for coming.
Well, what an introduction. Instead of me making y'all cry, it's the other way around. My name is Caleb Woods, and I graduated here in 2015. And the title of my book is Harnessing Darkness, Expressing Mental Illness Through Poetry. And I'm also in the process of writing a memoir, so I wanted to incorporate that in my talk today. So also my family's here, and so if they start crying or making noises, just ignore them. But I also want to thank the Mitchell West Center for Social Inclusion for having me here, as well as UNA and Professor Burkhead. So let me read this to you first. This is to kind of give you an example of where I was at a certain time in my life when I was here in Florence. I took a few more shots of Bacardi, chugged the last of a beer, and walked out of the bar, jumping over each of the parking curbs as if I were playing Frogger. I fumbled with my keys, finally managing to open the door. I squinted at the clock on my phone and saw that it was 1:57 a.m. I turned on my headlights, dodged the numerous people exiting the bar, and pulled out of the parking lot, making my way into the depths of the night. As I got onto the road, I felt around my sticky cup holders for a lighter, pulled a cigarette pack out of my shirt pocket, and took one hand off the steering wheel to shake one out of the pack. I felt around to find the button to roll down the driver's side window, lit the cigarette, and took one long drag. My vision blurred slightly. How much had I had to drink? As I left Muscle Shoals and crossed the O'Neill Bridge back into Florence, toward my apartment, I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Was I meeting a car, or did a car just pass me? I felt my eyes closing, and I squinted with all my might to fight them open, as if I were propping two heavy doors open with just my skinny arms. Even the cold night air blowing harshly through the cracked window wasn't enough to keep me fully alert tonight. Almost subconsciously, my foot presses the pedal and propels me faster towards home. A few more blocks away, I finally turned into my apartment complex, pulled up to the door, and stumbled out of the car, tossing my cigarette butt on the ground. Every key was a miss until finally I got lucky and the door unlocked, tossing me inside and halfway locking the door behind me. I quickly found my stash of weed and plopped down on my cigarette-burned futon from Walmart. My pipe full, I began to smoke. Smoke filled my tiny, lonely apartment. This was my life nowadays, finding anything to numb the pain. How could life be so worrisome when I was only 22? I took another hit, smoked another cigarette, walked to my bedroom, and fell down on the bed. That was one of the low times in my life. I grew up in a very rural part of Alabama, northeast Alabama. It's a small town called Pisgah. It's on Sand Mountain, if anybody's ever heard of that before. It's a place where there's lots of churches. Obviously, it's Alabama. But I grew up in a very religious household. My dad was a deacon, and my mom was a teacher at one of the Sunday classes. And when I would first confide into them, it was something I didn't really talk about because I was really worried of how they would react. And it was mainly something that I knew I needed to pray away and to try to fix. I grew up in church every time the doors were open, and I heard the story many times about gay people getting AIDS, dying, going to hell, etc. When I was in school, and beginning in third grade, I started to be bullied very relentlessly, and this lasted up until senior year of high school. And it started out as being called fag or queer, gay. Gaylub was a popular one, which is funny now, but it still was not then. And so even as early as fifth grade for me, I was contemplating not being here anymore. And in fifth grade, when my parents weren't home, I snuck into my parents' bedroom, and I knew where my dad hid his handgun in their closet, in the chest of drawers with the socks. So I went in and I grabbed the gun and I sat on the side of the bed. And in that moment, I wasn't trying to decide which way to die. I was trying to decide which way to go to hell. Because I knew on one hand, if I remained alive and lived life as a gay person and out, that I would go to hell. That's what I had been taught. And on the other hand, I had been taught that dying by suicide would also send me to hell. For some reason, I decided to live. I decided to not pull the trigger, but ended up on a path of hurting myself anyway. Instead of one immediate, bullet, it was more of a long years worth of just not caring. So I go through elementary school and middle school, and I have one friend who's always there for me. Her name was Marina, and she was bullied as well. And we would always hang out in the summers and things like that, and she was always there for me, and I was there for her. And the bullying got to a point, the school that I was at, it went from kindergarten through 8th grade, and so most people went to this different high school. But I knew that that's where all the bullies that's where they were going, and I knew that I couldn't go there. So I changed schools in hopes that the bullying would get better, but unfortunately I could not change my sexual orientation. So any type of feminine qualities or whatever I had that was, making everybody else's gaydar go off, I was still bringing that to the table. So I changed schools, and I started to eat less and less. And I developed an eating disorder, and the doctor put me on a strict diet of the Ensure drinks. And when that happened, my parents grew more and more concerned. And, for as far as all they knew, it was that they thought I was just depressed. So I was put on antidepressants and things like that to help, but things would not get better. And looking back, I realized that I was slowly just trying to kill myself by not eating, in hopes that I could almost trick God into thinking that if I die this way, maybe he won't send me to hell. So during high school, I continued to be bullied. It was kind of to my face, behind my back, giggling in the hallways, things like that. There was one instance where I was sitting in the class, and all around me a notebook was being passed. And it never came to my desk, and I thought that was odd. And it kept on going from person to person, and they would kind of hide it and, cut their eyes at me, and I knew that it had to be about me. So, because that's when you're in a state, at the time I did not realize that I had PTSD because of the bullying, but when you deal with that, you don't realize how much paranoia goes along with that, with people talking behind your back, and then you begin to just expect it. And so I followed the notebook all the way around the room and made sure I watched its final resting place, and it went into a guy's backpack. And when that happened, I knew that I had to get my hands on that notebook. So a lot of the students that were in that class were in my next class. And the next period was lunch period. So you would kind of just go in, drop your bags off, and the teacher would call roll, and then you'd walk out the door to the lunchroom. So I'm usually to the back of the class because my last name's W and they did it A through Z, which also probably furthered my isolation. But so I made sure to wait until everybody had entered or exited the door to kind of be at the back of the line. So as soon as I was at the back of the line and the teacher was there, I said, "Oh no, I forgot my lunch money." And I ran back in, and I was a good student and never got in trouble or anything. So she was like, "Okay, whatever," and just went on. And when the door shut, it locks behind you, for safety reasons. So she knew that I didn't need to have keys to lock the door. Anyways, I find this guy's backpack. I go through, I find the notebook, I find the piece of paper, and all over it was just these horrible things written about me. Caleb has AIDS. Caleb, is he gay or is he bisexual? I don't know. I heard he hooked up with so-and-so this weekend. I heard he had a disease. Just tons of just horrible things. And it's like the world stops for a moment and you don't even know what to think. I ended up taking that to the counselor, which didn't really help because the bullying just got way worse after that. And I was even told that, well, I shouldn't have gone through the guy's backpack. I'm like, well, they're making me want to kill myself every day, so there's that. Anyways, but so I just tried to grin and bear it as much as I could through the rest of high school. And in senior year, my friend Marina, who I had kind of lost touch with a little bit because we went to different schools, she had epilepsy and she actually passed away from a grand mal seizure. And I was a pallbearer at her funeral, and this just kind of released everything that was inside me was just let go because I had so much survivor's guilt for changing schools and leaving her behind. So after that, I knew that I needed to get help, and my mom sent me to go see a counselor. And this was the first time that anybody had ever said that I had PTSD. And I said, "Isn't that what soldiers have after they've seen a war?" And he said, "Well, from what you tell me, you, for a decade now, have been bullied relentlessly every day, and your friend just passed away, and you've been through a war too." And I didn't realize it at the time, but that we all have different wars, and that PTSD can develop from various types of traumas that we all endure. Mine were slowly but surely beginning to just pile up and pile up and pile up in a way of the death by 1,000 cuts scenario for me. So after her death, I wanted nothing to do with any of elementary school, high school, anything from Sun Mountain, anything. I wanted to get far away, so I came here, 2 hours away. And it started out great. Things were good here. I met a lot of new people. They were great. I thought it was a new chance for me to be another person. Just like I thought I had a new chance in high school, I could be straight. So I thought I would do that again, see if that would work a second time. It's 2 hours away, what could happen. But of course, I'm still gay. So while here, I started to, as I read to you earlier, started to just kind of spiral out of control. And I also wanted to read a journal entry from during that time that I actually wrote in my journal. And this was on January 29th, 2010. "I feel so bad about blaming my parents for what happened to me at elementary school and middle school. If I had to do it over, I wouldn't have ever blamed them. I wish I could have picked myself back up after all the name-calling, bullying, and abuse I was put through. Unfortunately, I wasn't strong enough. I have the best family I could ever ask for, but my guilt runs swiftly through me, clouding my thoughts and my actions. I feel so guilty about a great many things. My life, my eating habits. I wish I wasn't treated so badly throughout school. Everywhere I went, people said I was gay. Does that mean they're seeing something I've yet to figure out about myself? I wish I had never had sex. I wish I had never did drugs. I wish I worked out and exercised. It's hard to improve yourself when your whole life you've been told by others that you couldn't be improved. I wish I didn't let the abuse bother me. I wish I could talk openly about this once and for all. I don't want to break my family's heart. My anxiety and depression is almost too much to handle right now. Is there a way to change my destiny, or should I just let it play out as if it's been doing? I feel crazy. Sometimes I think I'm a hypochondriac. I've thought I've had cancer, tumors, lupus, meningitis, swine flu, cystic fibrosis, AIDS. I've even thought I was the Antichrist. Why do I have these awful feelings? I just desperately need someone to understand me. So that was an actual journal entry that I wrote, and as you can see, I was just thinking everything was wrong with me, which is obviously another symptom of PTSD, of the worry. My brain had already rewired itself to try to protect me at all costs. So there were countless times I went up to the clinic to get tested for various, things, going to the infirmary here, saying I have, problems, with many different things. And so I was basically an alcoholic. I was just doing anything to numb the pain, as I read earlier. And it was also during this time when I experienced a rape and was sexually assaulted. So when you take all the other traumas that I had been through and then add another really big one to that, I just didn't care anymore. So drugs, sex, alcohol, you name it, just anything to numb myself. If I was going to go to hell anyway, then what did it matter? So things were looking pretty grim until I met my husband, Luke, and he's back there filming. We were both in the same department here, communications, and I don't know if anybody here knew Jason Flynn, but we were on it was Luke's senior project, and I needed some hours for a film course, and somebody had randomly said that I think Flynn had told somebody that I was a good actor and I should be put in his movie, and I was like, I don't know what that's all about. Nobody said anything about that to me, but just by chance we met because of that. And Luke, he helped me, stop drinking. He helped me get off drugs, and he was there with me through all the tremors and the shaking and the panic attacks and things I experienced. And I finally had the courage to come out to my parents once and for all. And obviously they're here, and that's a happy moment of my story. But I told them that, I'm with Luke, and, I can't change. And we've done all this research. We've read so many books, watched all these documentaries. We know we're not sinning by being gay, and this is just how it is. And, over time they have come to be, very accepting of us. So little did I know that there would be other difficulties to face. Luke came out, his family, and there was just another whirlwind of issues that we faced. When Luke came out, his parents thought that I was the reason why he was gay. I was called a demon possessed. They sent me death threats. They said my whole family was possessed by demons because they accepted us. And they ended up stalking us. When Luke's grandfather died, we went back to his hometown, and at the funeral home, his dad tried to physically assault me. And anyway, we ended up moving so they wouldn't know where we were. And then a year ago, they showed up at our door. Have no clue how they found out where we were. We had to call the cops, and we had to file a cease and desist order. And that was kind of the end of that. And I know a lot of LGBT people want a happy ending with their family, and sometimes that does happen, and sometimes it's a long road to get there. But sometimes, as in the case with me and Luke, we took 3 years of our lives, almost 4, doing everything we could to basically make them love their son, and it wasn't enough. And sometimes it's not. And we realized that we were wasting so much of our life just trying to get them to do something that should have inherently been there already. So it had to be over, And I'm thankful to have a spouse who did put me first and did say, if they're going to treat him this way, I'm done, you know. So during all this, which would have been a few years ago up until the cease and desist thing happened last year, I was starting to experience panic attacks regularly. And my first big one happened in Kohl's. It was in a Kohl's store. So we live in Birmingham now, and we were at the Kohl's in Birmingham, and we headed straight to the Yankee Candle aisle, as the gays do, and there's so many different, flavors and sizes. They're like, small, medium, extra small, extra large of all these candles. And I'm like, I don't know. I love this flavor. We got to get every one of them. So, and I'm not about to pay $30 for a candle, but I had a coupon, so I had to get it. And I had like all these candles, and I'm at the checkout line. And then if you know of any of the symptoms of PTSD, is indecisiveness. And this was a very, very, like, on a small scale indecisiveness, but there's also been times when I don't know if I should turn into Walmart to the right or to the left, and then I have to just sit there, and I don't know what I'm doing because you're in the flight or freeze mode. And it's because your brain is thinking, it's telling you if you go that way, you're going to have a wreck, that you got better odds if you go this way, and that's what my brain's always doing. So I'm in the checkout line, and like I'm hyperventilating. We have to go hide in like the clothes and calm down because I still want those candles. I'm not leaving without them. And so Luke helps me calm down. And anyway, I realized I needed therapy because when I came to UNA, I had seen a therapist several times, and it was so difficult for me to come to class and even be in a setting like this because a setting like this was the pit of what I had experienced of trauma for so long. So I would skip class and not come and things like that. So anyways, I started seeing a therapist, and that's kind of where my book came into play. Is over the course of those 3 years, anytime I would have suicidal ideations or wake up from night terrors, I would write down my thoughts, and I ended up forming them into poetry. So I will go ahead and read some poems for you. This one's called Coping to Survive. The gnawing noise wreaks havoc, scratching, screeching. My distracted brain makes tiny footnotes, like a court reporter documenting each tragedy to compile for my mind. My Santa Claus list is getting longer as the notes pile up, surrounded by paper weaving in, about, and around me like the muscles of the brain. We are our own organism. Our coping mechanisms keep us alive, helping us hold on to the fragments, a part of us, apart from us. These tiny mechanisms cling to us, attract like a magnet, then dissolve. Coping is only surviving. To truly live, we must accept our lives as they are. But we keep crafting our mechanisms, crafting our stories, always the artists we are. Everywhere I'm not. You don't know what it's like to be broken, to feel like the pieces of you are scattered across the earth, not physically, but in time. Pieces stuck in the past where you can never reach. You can't get them back, no matter how hard you try. A sliver of me remains in the classrooms of my elementary school where I was first tormented. Another piece of me haunts the hallways of my high school where the harassment took place. A large part of me lies on the floor of my rapist's apartment, stuck in the fibers of the carpet, destined to always be stepped on. I left 2 pieces of me at separate funeral homes, one for you, one for me, both times a severed tie. Cut up in tiny little pieces, fed to the world, shattering my whole self, crumbs of a life. My book is divided into 4 parts called Birth, Life, Death, and Rebirth. So it's not all just doom and gloom. It does get happier as you go along, if anybody was wondering. Cues, help me, I say. It's up to you to listen. But do you? The echoes in the distance, the screams fading out. Help me, I say, it's up to you to listen. But will you? The words are spoken, the thoughts are on my lips. Help me, I say, it's up to you to listen. But can you? I can only speak with context clues and nonverbal cues. Help me, I say, but it's too late. Elastic hearts. Time brought tragedy. Our hearts met within the empty spaces, always struggling to remain attached as the world pulled on each end of every single heartbeat. Each beat is a cry for freedom, a reach for justice, an expression of authenticity. Brave, that's what we are. With 1,000 scars on our bodies and minds, we continue to enter the battlefield, never knowing, always, never, ever knowing. Go away. You show up at our door begging for more love, but we've run out long ago, or my husband has at least. I still pity you, all of you, even the dead ones, for wasting your relationship with him. He gave you years of our life together to please you, but you didn't care. Never did. Now it's too late. You're long gone. In the form of a cease and desist, each one of you ceases to exist. Burning bridges. The bridge collapses, triggered by an explosive, a bomb of intolerance. A waste of a match, a waste of a life, a waste of a parent. You say it's not love, unlovable us, floating in the water below. We hang tight to a single float, together, taken by the current, washed away. Waking up on an island, damaged goods still surviving on our own. A creation of a pair, a creation of two lives, a creation of husbands. String me along. These invisible strings, do they pull us apart or tie us together? They pull, surely, on our hearts, but is it enough? Must a pull be necessary for us to do what is right? Shouldn't we just inherently know that we're good? These visible strings show all the flaws. My strings are in threads, unraveling fast. Piece by piece, they slip away. As they fall, they make beautiful music, like strings on a harp falling into glory, not falling to pieces, falling into peace. Drifting. I drift off. What a sweet release. My body feels the energy as it leaves. Gone, hiding away, hiding in plain sight in the air, the touch of the skin with the leaves and plants. I'm not gone, just dispersed, spread out in a billion pieces, floating into the world, a traveler who can't sightsee, only falling where I land. It wants you to come along, to appreciate the small things, a ladybug, a ray of light, the way the rain speckles on the ground. Each drop of my energy can be soaked up, breathed in and released back out. I am one with the earth, ashes and dust forming together. Think of me in every drop, every crumb, even the flap of a butterfly wing. I'll be there, just not here, all around you, all around the world. At the beginning of my book, I have a quote from my psychologist, which was very profound, and I also wrote about it, or have written about it in my upcoming memoir, and I wanted to give you a chance to know exactly how that felt being there when he said this to me. And at the beginning of the book, I put this quote: "It seems as if the existential question you wrestle with is, if I'm not loved, do I exist?" It seems as if the existential question that you wrestle with is, if I'm not loved, do I exist? My psychologist holds his notebook close over his crossed legs, looking at me over his glasses. I swear, time stopped. After the words left his lips, my brain had a soft aha moment that left me startled, goosebumps scattering across my skin. It was like an icebreakers commercial. A waft of cold air fell over me and I was forever changed. This was the advice I needed, the advice I had been searching for years. And here it was, plain as day. If I'm not loved, do I exist? For my entire life, my brain asked this question. It knocked on the door of both my mind and my heart, but I never answered. I couldn't hear it over the suicidal ideations, the name-calling from the bullies, or the hate constantly spewed my way. Too many thoughts rattled around my brain, keeping me from truly understanding myself, the person I was and am. With a slight nervous giggle, I stare at him for a moment and begin to nod my head, turning my gaze towards the god-awful burgundy-colored rug on the floor that offers this 90s inspiration of twirls of gold and green. After a beat, I look back up and finally acknowledge his words. That's it. You're right. For the first time in my therapy session, I was at a loss for words. Too much truth was told, and I was still digesting the information. I began to have flashbacks of all the people I wanted love from. The church, family, friends, teachers, partners, co-workers, in-laws, everyone. I wanted to be loved by everyone. Not only is this already an impossible feat, but for someone growing up gay in Alabama, it's never going to happen. All of the groups of people I previously mentioned had already confirmed this in one way or another. So what was I searching for? To heal my trauma? To find more love? To be understood? Only further therapy would help me find the answers to these questions. One thing I did know, however, was that I needed to start existing, living. Whether I'm loved by others or not, there's one person who I desperately needed love from, myself. And thank you for allowing me to be here to do that. So thank you.